President Trump losing on immigration again today. This is even after the Supreme Court recently intervened, trying to help him fend off lower courts that pause his orders when they are deemed through the process likely illegal. But that's back where the administration finds itself again tonight, because the news is a rebuke from a federal judge hammering Trump with another national block of what has been this flailing effort to try to rewrite citizenship. The ruling freezes the White House. There are new details while that's going on that we're getting about that DOJ whistleblower case, which was against Trump's Justice Department and refers as well to the embattled and allegedly at times unlawful immigration agenda of this administration. There are now damning messages coming out that reveal the real-time texts about a top official's directive to defy court orders, being ready to say F you to the judges. All of this bolsters those initial reports, which shook the DOJ and Washington when they first broke.
Emil Bovee, a former Trump personal lawyer, now top aide to the Deputy Attorney General, pushed DOJ officials to ignore court orders.
Bovee stated that DOJ would need to consider telling the courts F you and ignore any such order. Silence overtook the room.
Erez Rouhani filed a whistleblower complaint against the Department of Justice. He says, I didn't sign up to lie. In response to his termination,
that official, Mr. Bovee, once did Trump's criminal defense work. He's up for this judgeship, and he did fend off the same accusations in his testimony. That whistleblower, though, is telling the New York Times today that Bovee's testimony didn't clearly or firmly deny all of this. And now we have the receipts, which show other people at the time heard the same thing, because multiple officials were texting each other how Bovee talked up telling the courts F you, which of course means in this term that they wanted to defy the courts, the DOJ, breaking the law rather than upholding it. Another DOJ lawyer writes in a text, I guess we're going to say F you to the court. And the response was a sarcastic super. Then you can see there the two discussing how Pam Bondi, the AG, would ultimately be responsible. The point is that these other lawyers who are inside the Trump administration, who had been deemed loyal enough to be senior enough to handle this immigration case, were aware of this plot, telling judges F you, defying orders. This is a Watergate level of evidence. Texting privately about it then. This was before that lawyer, the now whistleblower, was fired or moved on into this position. So again, from a legal perspective, that makes the evidence more credible. Now, DOJ responds to this. They're denying it today. They're saying no one was ever asked to defy a court order. You'll notice saying that no one was asked to explicitly defy a court order is different than denying that Mr. Bovee did tell potentially a bunch of people that they would say F you to the courts, or that that was one of the potential plots. And we're early in this 4-year term. The DOJ is responding because it has to, because ignoring this isn't going to work right now, because facts, evidence, whistleblowers can still matter, because the receipts and the public reporting is putting heat on them for betraying the Justice Department itself at a time when they are tonight losing in the courts. While the same DOJ, on a very different issue, is taking heat from the MAGA conspiracy crowd for hyping and then failing to deliver on what Pam Bondi said in public was a Jeffrey Epstein client list that she claimed was sitting on her desk. Either she was terribly misinformed or she was actively lying, because now she runs the same DOJ that says there's no such list. MAGA leaders are calling for AG Bondi to go. Tucker Carlson and others basically saying she might have to be the first person sacrificed in this second term. That's a major storm on several fronts, plus those court losses for an attorney general early in her term and in the crux of everything Trump's trying to do on these issues. We're joined by two regulars our MSNBC viewers know, Jason Johnson and Melissa Murray. Melissa, your thoughts on these stories, which are pretty intersecting, the court loss today and whistleblower accounts of this immigration agenda?
Well, the court loss isn't surprising. The text of the 14th Amendment is plain, and the Supreme Court, even as it narrowed the eligibility for nationwide injunctions, did say that class actions would be a suitable vehicle. The administration has said that it will challenge the class certification procedures that Judge LaPlante used here. So I think we can expect this to go back to the court. But this all intersects, as you say, with what's happening at DOJ, because, again, we see that the DOJ is very much advancing the project of this administration. The idea of the DOJ as a separate and independent institution, separate from the office of the president, seems to be no more the case. This is very much Donald Trump's DOJ. There isn't independence. And because there is no independence, it's very clear that this administration and the DOJ is going to be advancing the president's agenda. And that means appealing this decision from Judge LaPlante. It means going after Erez Ravuni because he has been a whistleblower and has sounded the alarm on what is happening at DOJ. And it also shows that the interaction between DOJ and other relevant departments like DHS is really riven right now. And there's a breakdown in communication. There's a breakdown in coherence on these policies as DOJ strives to do what this president wants.
Jason, it's been a bad week for Attorney General Pam Bondi.
Yeah, it has. And, but the reality is this should have been expected, right? Like the moment that the court said this sort of, we're going to change the criteria, we knew that every ACLU immigrant organization, they were all going to squabble up. We knew that they were going to engage in this sort of pushback in order to stop this end of birthright citizenship. So, Pam Bondi should have expected that. The DOJ should have expected that. Situation with Beauvais is a little different. The idea that, look, we've seen the Trump administration consistently ignore court rulings. And let's remember that in this sort of big, ridiculous bill they just passed, there were actually stipulations in that bill to make it harder, right, to take away funding from courts to enforce if individuals don't listen after a court ruling has happened. So to have this come out, that you have somebody on the record saying, we're just going to ignore the courts. And Ari, this is important, an important distinction. It's one thing for a member of the Department of Justice to say, we're going to appeal this ruling. We're going to fight this ruling as much as we can. That is completely different than saying F the law, right? And so this is another reflection of sort of how off base this administration is from the law, from values, from anything that we've expected before. And as to whether or not Pam Bondi couldn't figure out where the Epstein list was, that's something for the conspiracy theorists, because I never assumed that they were going to release that no matter how much Trump talked about it last year.
Right. And they may have talked about it for other reasons, hype, politics. In her case, though, coming into office, she's either was terribly misinformed, which is its own kind of malpractice, or she was lying. She just thought you go on Fox and you lie about this stuff.